Corey Galinsky, welcome to the Walk podcast. Thanks for spending some time with us this morning.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the invite.
Yeah, no problem. We were just chatting a little bit offline about the pyramid that you got going there with the blocks of the cinder blocks, the Severn Bank cinder blocks. You know, it got me thinking too that you know, these things that we build from a marketing perspective that we used to take to, I say we used to take to conferences and events and meetings with clients. We're not really doing that so much. So you have some of these little pieces that you can build pyramids with, since you're not taking them to clients at the moment during 2020 COVID.
Yeah, well, literally and figuratively during a pandemic, we still find ways to grow and build.
I love it. Okay, take a snap of that. We can use that. You can use that as a little marketing piece for the company. I love that. How high would that, do you think, if I hit you in 2 months and we do this again, that pyramid will be touching the ceiling?
I wish, but I have to begin to reinforce it with like a coat hanger or something like that. So I think what I'll probably do is just do some waves, but I do have it. I think it's 11 rows strong right now. Once I get past 10, I have trouble counting, but I think it's 11.
You got the Jenga game going on there. You know what you could do is get with the builders that you guys do business with, have them take a picture of it and say, heck, how can I reinforce this without getting into rebar and concrete?
There you go. There you go.
So Corey, for those that don't know Corey runs the mortgage channel for Severn Bank. Grab 30, 45 seconds and tell us a little bit about you and the company, and then we'll start spitballing some ideas and thoughts.
Sure. Severn is a community bank located in the capital, Annapolis, Maryland. We've been here for 3 or 4 decades. I myself have been with Severn for just under 10 years. And it's a wonderful organization where you are you're right there with the decision makers, and we offer a really wide array of opportunities to find financial solutions for our business partners and our clients. So really been a pleasant surprise. I was brought here, believe it or not, to open a call center, and went in a complete pivot, and we've gone retail. And from a community bank perspective, we have all the wonderful things that a big bank or lender can offer, and we have a lot of really neat niche stuff that that we can do that nobody else can as well. So it's a really great complement to our great staff of mortgage bankers and operations.
Geographically, you're in a really competitive market. I mean, you're in one of those markets where, even though you're not in DC proper, you're kind of in that competitive environment that is ultimately DC Metro, where we have community banks and credit unions and larger depositories and independent mortgage bankers and brokers. I mean, it's a pretty healthy snapshot of what a market would look like if you throw a lot of different types of competition into the market. I think it's also proof, maybe from a consumer perspective, that options are a good thing, right? Like, you can all coexist in the same market and create value in various ways. I'm curious, when you first started off your career in the industry, and as you've gone, there's a lot of different directions that you could have gone, right? How did you get into mortgage banking to start? I mean, you've been with the same company for 11 years, and looking at your face, that means you probably straight out of college, right?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Believe it or not, I was a political science major and had every intention of being an international lawyer. Had taken my LSATs and was ready to go into law school, and had one foot in the door. And one of my fraternity brothers at the time said, "Hey, why don't you come over to my office and take a look at what we're doing?" And I went in and I saw this high energy environment where there was a lot of collaboration. And ultimately, the impact was people helping people helping people. And I loved that idea. And I saw, a really great impact to each person on the team, but ultimately a really great impact in the community. And I thought, well, let me see what this is all about. And if things go well, we'll see. And if not, law school will probably be there in a couple of months. And honestly, I started as an originator, was fortunate enough to be very successful. and then was promoted throughout the ranks and learned for some really great people. Started at a lender, and that was before the great ripple of the early 2000s. So
Yep.
once that occurred, I realized that it was probably a safer bet career-wise to go with an organization like a bank that had some perceived stability.
Sure.
So I went into the banking environment, and was again very fortunate to meet our CEO here, Alan Hyatt, who gave me an opportunity, and again brought me in to help him create a mortgage entity, and in a call center model. We realized that maybe that wasn't the greatest fit, pivoted to retail, and have been growing ever since.
That interesting the way you just described that, and you and I have gotten to know each other as in support of your strategic growth within the markets that you support, and the story that you just told about going to law school, right? And thinking that you had your trajectory kind of figured out, and then you walk into an environment and everything changes. Everything changes for you in that moment. I would expect that as you talk to originators that you've brought onto the team, or even folks on the operation side, you've probably seen some of those stories, those similar stories. I mean, you didn't go to school to be a mortgage banker, so at some point something must have changed. I'm curious, those conversations you have with people that you meet that maybe ultimately you partner with, there's probably some similarities there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think it's cliche, but the beauty of life is the journey, and that you never know. It's not telegraphed, and if you live each day to embrace that, you can push the envelope and do things that you didn't script. Then I think a lot more lies before you than if you just try to write it down. It's fantastic, don't get me wrong, to have goals and to aspire, but I don't think we need to live life by an instruction manual either. I think that we need to walk that path and figure out where opportunities align with our experience, and they can maximize our potentials as individuals, and we can find those perfect fits personally and professionally.
Do you think that's gotten more difficult in the last year or so, where people aren't physically getting together as much, and so we're not having the same types of conversations?
That's a good question. I think that this environment has helped and hurt connections, because I think that it's easier for people to come together because you can have a Zoom meeting. But after that 15 or 20 or 30 minutes, you're kind of isolated.
Right.
And so it's a challenge. You have to reach out more, and you have to try to use a bunch of different means of communication, not just email, not just phone calls, not just Zooms, to try to keep people, to keep unified.
Are there things that you can think of over the last 12 months that of course, Zoom is one of them, but other things that you've thought of that you've started to incorporate, or that you're finding yourself incorporating, that you weren't utilizing so much pre-pandemic?
I think things like applications like Zoom or Teams, which
Right.
is a really good application, which is kind of an all-in-one. Not to make it a Microsoft commercial all of a sudden, but it
Right.
does work well, where you can do, not everything requires an email. Not everything requires a Zoom call. So to have multiple channels of communication within one central location is very, very powerful, especially in these times. And then you can get it to your phone. You can get it through your laptop. So the ability to send and receive information, and also judge the importance of that information, and use each mechanism appropriately, I think is very, very powerful. And hopefully teams have learned to employ that. And there's also, I think, electronic verifications and signatures and things like that have accelerated rampantly over the last 12 months, because businesses have been, if they haven't been progressing, they've been forced to.
Yeah, absolutely. This environment has thrown gasoline on technology advances in a pretty unbelievable way. I was reminded of that. I don't know, a couple of weeks ago. One of the things that we've incorporated here at Model Match is sending very short video clips to those that we work with. And so I'll pull up the technology and how maybe one of our clients are utilizing the technology. And I'll just send them a 2-minute video. Hey, here's a couple things I'm noticing. Here's some spots where you maybe could grab some efficiencies. You click the go button and they get this video instead of this long email from me or us trying to find time to get on the phone. I honestly, Corey, didn't think it was that big a deal. And of course, like anybody with a new tool, I was a little hesitant at first. And then you send that first video. The feedback that I got on just a silly little 2-minute video that said, hey, if you click on these couple of buttons, you may find some things that you're not currently utilizing, was pretty incredible. I mean, the feedback was so positive. I don't know if we would have done that as quickly as we did if it wasn't for the environment that forced us to do it. Are you noticing that your originators are starting to accept some of those things a little bit more than maybe they were before, whether it's video messaging or otherwise?
Yeah, I think that I think things are normalizing, and it helps with business and it helps with relationships. So an example would be a lot of my mentors in the business that have taught me will send me handwritten notes or thank you letters or books that have handwritten things, and it's wonderfully intimate that somebody would take the time to do that. I think that doing the video that you just described is exactly the same thing, but different because it's wonderfully intimate. It's specific to that individual and it hits home because you've taken the time to dedicate not just a phone call or not just a very simple email that you can now talk into your phone and send as you're walking down the street, but you're physically taking the time to produce something
right
for someone else. And I think that there's thought that goes into that, and it speaks more to what you're putting into the relationship, and hopefully it makes others want to reciprocate.
Yeah, no, such a good point. You were talking earlier about your introduction to the industry, and you were saying people helping people helping people. There's this human component to it that even when we don't realize it, we want that component. And so you just made me think again. I sent one this morning at 8:00. It was, again, just a little 2-minute clip of something very specific. But you know how that clip started? It started with me saying, hey man, good morning. I hope you're doing great. Hadn't talked to you in a little bit. Was wondering how your 17-year-old's doing with the such and such. So I didn't even think about that until you just said it. I threw in, just because it's who I am, I threw in this 15-second, very personal commentary before I then jumped into, hey, I want to show you something. So it's amazing how now within technology, that's become so transferable.
Yeah, absolutely. And technology, hopefully, just makes it easier. You're not cheating it. It just makes it easier for everybody.
Right. Yeah. I had a conversation like this with somebody else recently, and they had the really great comment of, technology when used appropriately just makes us better at what we're already attempting to do on our own. That was pretty good. I was poking around a little bit, and you and I have spoken in the past. I know you've been super involved with the Maryland Mortgage Bankers Association over the years. And if I recall correctly, whether you and I talked about it or I read this somewhere, you had also been in support of, I think, younger people in the community and getting them introduced to the industry, whether it was recent college graduates or maybe a speaking engagement I saw that you had with the MBA 2019. I think you have some of that experience. And I'm curious, when you're presenting the industry to those individuals, how are you presenting it and what kind of feedback do you get?
So as you might imagine, and just an aside, the Maryland Mortgage Bankers and Brokers Association, great group of 150 plus, banks and lenders where, believe it or not, we all put competition aside, come together for the greater good of our industry. So just a wonderful group of men and women. So anybody watching who is a member, thank you. Anybody who's thinking about being a member, I strongly encourage it, because once you start, the rest is history. It's just going to take you places you never imagined, and introduce you to some great mentors and great peers. When we went to universities like Towson and like University of Maryland, most of these kids, because we went there 2018, 2019, 2000, well, not this year, but most of these kids during the great financial crisis, where their parents' homes were, some of them in jeopardy, some of them going through modifications, they were 8, 9, and 10 years old. And so they understood in a very, very different light what our industry was, and they probably were a little bit jaded about entering the industry.
Sure.
And so we had to approach it as there was opportunity in the industry. There was a challenge in the economy and in the country overall. And there's a tremendous amount of opportunity for people moving forward. And what we tried to do was, when most people think about mortgage banking, they think, I got to go and I have to be a loan originator. And I think that, the people that I worked with, because I certainly won't take any credit, but I'll take any blame you want to throw, did a great job. We broke it down into, IT and marketing and communications and operations and support and legal, to show people that banking and lending has a tremendous amount of opportunity and a lot of avenues, a lot of career paths, and a lot of advancement for people across the board, not just people that are in business administration.
Right.
And so it was really well received, I think, at the universities. We formed some great relationships with Smith School of Business at the University of Maryland, and with Towson University, and with a lot of the professors there. We continue to go back. COVID's been interesting because everything is virtual now, but we've gotten very deeply involved with job fairs, with teaching on campus. So it's been a very great opportunity for not only the association, but more importantly, the universities and those students. Because if we can get there, meshing all of the 150 plus members with all of the thousands of students looking for job opportunities, and demystify that, that's really where the traction occurs.
When I think over the years of conversations that I've had with top originators or producing managers, and have asked them about, how did you get introduced to the industry? Why are you doing this? And how did you get into it? So many of those stories over the years anyway, have been similar to yours. Maybe I was on a different path. But then I met a buddy that I hadn't seen since high school or college, and he rolled up driving a $200,000 car and telling me about his beach house, and said, hey, you should come give this a shot. And maybe I just was extreme with what I just described, but you know what I mean. And so you immediately become an originator, and you learn how to be a good salesperson so that you can go get those things. Again, not suggesting that that's everyone, but that was a pretty healthy segment of those that I would ask. Do you think that's going to start to change a little bit when you look at those college students and maybe what's important to them, or where their head is from a risk perspective? Because to your point, they live through the emotional trauma, a lot of them, of seeing their parents struggle to make a mortgage payment, or have to sell their house and downsize or rent. Do you think that mentality changes a little bit? I'm maybe curious to get your take, or am I trying to connect dots that you think don't exist?
I think that it's what's in your motivation. So although I'm motivated by success, I'm not motivated directly by money. Mm-hmm. And I think that if that's what you're motivated by, you're going to be looking and you won't find what you're looking for, because there's always more money to be made. So I think that you need a motivation that's greater and more substantial than money. Because if that's all it is, then again, you're never going to be grabbing it.
Never ends.
The motivation in this business, for example, was I was motivated to help people. I'm fortunate enough to where I have a lot of great mortgage bankers that I work with. that I'm able to help in situationally specific, loan transactions, and help them, build those, or help them achieve things that they didn't know were possible in their career. And so I have motivated myself to help people. And I mean it in the most, this is honest, and this isn't just this year, but every year I don't look at my pay stub, probably not a good thing. Don't look at my pay stub until the end of the year. I was talking to one of my top originators the other day, and I said, and he was mentioning to me all this other stuff. And I said, look, the last payroll is December the 18th. I'll look then, because then I have to, all the dust.
Then you have to call your accountant.
Yeah, but it's not, if that's the motivation, you'll always be looking.
Right.
The motivation should be, whatever drives you, but, hopefully it's not what you're driving in.
Oh my gosh, what a great quote. That was really good. I do an exercise with companies that we support in their growth efforts. And when I'm in front of a group of managers, let's say, that are trying to build their branch or build their region, one of the exercises we go through is I'll just ask, when you were getting started as an originator, or even now as an originator, what are the things that motivate you? To your point, like, why do you do this? Why this industry? Why are you not in pharmaceutical sales? Why are you not doing something else? And you're not allowed to say, because I believe in the dream of American home ownership. Like that could be an answer, but I'm asking you to table that one. And a lot of the answers end up being things like quality work-life balance. It could be something relative to goals to impact your retirement down the road. A lot of times it has to do with people. I like to work and consult with human beings and not just key in data all day long. And so there's a lot of things that get written down. I ask them to, okay, now turn over, look at that piece of paper, share it with everybody. And generally it's the same thing, and it all relates to lifestyle. But lifestyle includes work-life balance. It includes how much time do I get to have some flexibility to see my son or my daughter in their school play, or whatever the case may be. And then if you think about that, if you're trying to grow your branch or grow your company, the people that you're building a relationship with generally have similar motivations. And I do think that's something that's a little bit special about our industry, especially on the origination side. If you're an engineer, maybe the things you write down might be a little bit different. If you're a mathematician or an economist, some of those things might be a little bit different. But there's a pretty incredible human element to what we do, even in between sales and operations, when it's managed effectively, right? When people aren't siloed and an operations staff knows that I just created value for an originator or a customer, that then you said people helping people helping people. It's the same thing inside of that sphere. So it's interesting to hear you say that. Do you when you meet with those college students and have those events, do you feel really good about the future of the industry? Do you think that those students are excited to be a part of mortgage banking?
Yeah, I do. I think that I think it's about us marketing our industry, because when we put ourselves in the right position as banks and as lenders, there's a tremendous amount of opportunity out there. There's a tremendous amount of young talent that just wants to learn. And as an industry, for a long time, we failed because we just, one of my great mentors will always say that all we did was it was a zero-sum game where we were, rearranging chairs in each other's backyards and swapping.
Right.
Well, I'll take that. Okay, great. Well, but nothing new is coming. Nothing fresh is coming. No new ideas, no new ways of doing things, no new processes. And so if you embrace that and you bring people in that are young and know more about social media, know more about technology than originators that are double their age, and you help those two people share ideas and share their experiences and share their specific knowledge, it empowers the whole organization. So I think that there's a great amount of young talent out there. As a matter of fact, we're putting together a career center at the Maryland Mortgage Bankers Association for all the members, and just to flood, the opportunities from the respective universities around here, because there's a tremendous amount of young talent out there that we just need to get out there and take advantage of.
Now, I love that you're doing that. tell me where your head is 2021. So 2020 was a year. Maybe we should just stop there. 2020 was a year.
Yeah.
And a very interesting one for our industry, where every time we turn on the news, it's negative, 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 negative. Yet our industry is just going bonkers, and people are making 4 or 5x what they've ever made. And you've got sign-on bonuses going out to operations staff that are making moves, and we're trying to keep up with capacity. And as we get into 2021, and obviously some of the projections are that we're going to see a pretty significant drop off, at least on the refi side, although that could be a whole nother episode for you and I to have that conversation. But tell me where your head is for 2021.
I think that you kind of led on to it right there. I think the market will normalize a little bit. I believe that we'll still see an incredibly strong purchase market. But I think the refinance opportunities will be not nearly as much as they were this year, for obvious reasons, as there's just not that much in the money anymore. Yeah. So I think that there will still be opportunity, but I think that the purchase market will prevail. And I think that strategically, the people that have this year made their hay on refinances might want to, reinvest in their strategies of how to originate purchase business, because I think that the pendulum will swing back, and so hopefully those people have put some money in their rainy day jar and are also strategizing for how to reinvigorate those relationships or strengthen those relationships. But yeah, I think that I think that it'll still be an incredibly strong market versus years past. I don't think it'll be nearly as strong this year,
right?
But I still think it'll be probably stronger than 19.
Well, you talk about that rainy day jar. I would think anybody that lived through 2008, 2009 was learned that they hopefully funded that rainy day jar this year. You may have already said it when you were just talking about where you're focused as an originator, but if you were giving a single piece of advice as we get into 2021 to an originator, what would that advice be?
All business is important business. And I have seen people this year focus only on refinances and forsaken purchases. I've seen people focus solely on purchases and forsaken refinances this year. So on one side, you eliminate relationships by way of realtors that you don't service and builders that you don't service. And on the other side, you eliminate relationships by not servicing your current client book, who then goes somewhere else and is introduced to a lender that might be lower cost than you, nicer than you, smarter than you, funnier than you, whatever it might be. So no business is bad business unless it's truly bad business for the bank or for your organization. So I think that you should seek opportunity. So I preach to our staff that we like construction loans. We like bridge loans. We like FHA loans. We like VA loans. We like USDA loans. We like Fannie and Freddie loans. We like jumbo loans. There's no reason to pigeonhole yourself, because then you just have to wait for that one loan or that one specific transaction to come along. And it's not to say that you blind yourself, but we're all capable of more than we imagine. So if you take the time to understand each specific transaction and loan type, you can execute greatly, and you can be the specific financial solution for all of your clients.
That's great. You keep bringing up, you keep saying the word mentor, and clearly you see the value in mentorship, because you give credit to those that have mentored you. You haven't mentioned any names, but yet you've mentioned a mentor told me this, I learned from a mentor that. I think one of the things that you've also pointed out in this conversation, the importance of listening, the importance of having conversations, and the importance of maybe recognizing some mentors that can support you in whatever your journey is. And Corey, you've shared some great things here, and clearly not only someone that's leading an organization, but creates that mentorship value to those that you're supporting. Let me ask you a couple more things in closing. What do you do outside of the industry that kind of gives you juice? I know that you and I have had conversations about the volunteer work. I think you're involved in a couple of organizations, but that or others, what do you do outside of the business that gives you that juice and that extra energy?
I golf really poorly.
Does that add or take away from the juice?
Yes, it does both. I like to stay fit. I like to stay active. I like to go out to eat. I like to enjoy myself. I like to be around friends. I like to be with my kids. Love my kids. It's just I like being around people, and I'm a pretty social and active person. And then you mentioned also part of a nonprofit. I'm the president of a group called Seeds for Success, where we mentor and tutor, not to bring up the word mentoring again, but we mentor and tutor young kids that are, for lack of a better term, less fortunate, mostly in public housing.
Mm-hmm.
And we pick them up right around third grade, try to see them all the way through high school. And actually, the program is just getting into its 10th/11th year. So we're fortunate enough to see some of our kids now going to college and being the first of their families and first in many generations to go to college. And hopefully, obviously, that'll matriculate. We can help them get their first place. And so it's a really great cause. And I think if we're fortunate, I read a saying the other day that nobody gets poor from giving. And there's also another saying that, when you give, you get. So, I've seen it firsthand. And I think that a lot of these kids and a lot of these families don't necessarily put themselves in these situations by choice. And so when I look at my children, and if you imagine it's a 100-yard dash life, and they're all at the starting line.
Right.
Everybody deserves a chance to just line up at the starting line. If somebody chooses not to run as hard as somebody else, that's a different story. Everybody deserves to line up at the starting line and run the same race from the same starting line.
Corey, I love that. What a perfect time of year to have that conversation as we're getting into the holidays as well. And all of us should maybe, these are things we should think about throughout the entire year, but I think more people maybe have these thoughts as we get into the holidays. So thanks for mentioning that. I think it's a great way to close this out. We appreciate you. We appreciate the opportunity to pull you into the walk and go for a little virtual walk today. Anything you want to get off your chest right before we close?
No, thank you very much for allowing me to be a part of it. And it was a great time. Thank you very much.
No, thank you. Corey Galinsky, we appreciate you, my friend.
Thank you, Eric.
All right, bud. Take care.
See ya.